The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and comment on the agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee and declare a quorum present. Councillor Haas has requested to allow to participate remotely. Councillor Haas, please state your reason for your request.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I am away for a family medical event, and I am seated in a private room, a private home, and will not be interrupted.
Great, thank you. Unless there's any objection, this request is going to be granted this evening. The minute taker is also participating remotely this evening, so committee members, please be sure to turn your microphones on when speaking. If they're unable to hear you, they will make an announcement. All right, so welcome back everyone from our summer break. I know we've all appreciated having some time off. It's time to get back into the swing of things. I think the weather we're having makes me feel like fall. It makes me feel like we have to be back in this room a little bit. So we're going to jump into our agenda. We've got a short agenda tonight. It's only a couple of items, but they're really important things. So the first one is relating to the request to authorize an issuance of a building permit for a property at 270 Beaver Street. And I believe we have Jesse Rounds here to speak to us about this one.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and our members. I was scrolling into the agenda instead of looking at the item that I needed to. My apologies. So just as an outline, and actually the applicant is here if you wish to speak to him. The request is to permit or to authorize the issuance of a building permit for a property at 270 Beaver Street. This is a parcel that has no frontage on a Class 5 or higher road. And so based on RSA 674-41C, they are required, the applicant is required to come to the City Council to request that authorization to issue a building permit, for my office to issue a building permit. In addition, the City Council in 2000 passed a resolution, a policy that made it so that the City Council would not consider or would not allow building permits on Class 6 roads. So the action that the City Council will have to take beyond just voting to authorize the issuance is to suspend, by a 2/3 majority, suspend that policy. But that's not up for discussion tonight as far as I know. Just looking to the attorney.
So you don't want to hear a recommendation from this committee as
With
to
respect to the policy itself at this point?
to suspending?
Well, no, to suspend, yes.
Okay.
I think you should vote to suspend, but
But not
with
on the
respect to
merits.
the overall question of Class 6 roads, that's for another
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah, so this is just specific to this one item, yeah. And that's all I have unless you have any questions.
So I just want to point out to my fellow committee members, we've seen a similar application to this at this committee recently. The difference being that this one is a Class 6 road that related to a private driveway.
Yes.
Or private road.
Mhm.
And the language in that 2000 resolution is erroneous when it comes to the private roads. It's specific when it comes to these Class 6 roads. So I think we have to give it a little bit more due diligence and make sure we're asking council to suspend if that's the direction we go in.
Yeah, that's correct. Anything else? Thank you so much.
Counselor Williams?
I guess I just wanted to talk about this road a little bit. It's in my neighborhood, it's Beaver Street, and it's an extremely steep road with an eroded set of steps at the top and all sorts of weeds, and basically gets treated like you would expect a Class 6 road to get treated, except most Class 6 roads are out in the boonies, and this is right in the middle of a medium-density neighborhood. I'm not happy with that situation at all. I'd like to get it all changed so that we could fix the steps. I think the neighbors would really love that. But short of that, I'm kind of worried about, what are the implications of having a driveway against a Class 6 road? Does that road get, is it gonna get shoveled? Is there any city maintenance for that short section next to the driveway? And should we instead perhaps be considering reclassifying that to a different kind of road, as any normal homeowner with a connection to the road would expect to have the kind of services available?
So, and it may be more useful to hear from the Public Works Director, but in this case, the driveway will come off the stub end of the eastern terminus of Beaver Street. And so maintenance already exists to the edge of pavement of Beaver Street. And so this will just be an extension, the driveway will extend off of that. And so that will be privately maintained beyond that. And they're required to maintain that through an agreement, I believe, through Public Works, yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may. Don Lucia, Public Works Director. Yeah, so the simple answer to your question is no, the city will not maintain the Class 6 road. That is a matter of state law. We're not allowed to spend public funds on a Class 6 road. That's what the sort of distinguishing feature of a Class 6 road. And I think the applicant, hopefully they'll have an opportunity to speak tonight. I think they certainly understand that. But it's explicit in the rules that is the case. So in the Land Development Code, we've got language that says the issuing authority, which is the city engineer for single-family or duplexes, the planning board for multifamily, commercial, what have you, may issue a street access permit for access based on the demonstration that the Class 6 highway to be used as a driveway is suitable for emergency vehicles on the date of issuance of the street access permit. So, I have to find that the section of this Class 6 road that's going to be used essentially as a driveway is suitable for emergency vehicles on the date that we issue the driveway permit. I should point out at this point that this was already an existing driveway. It was in use as a driveway until just a few years ago when the city actually demolished a home that I believe was damaged by fire. It is, if you look at it today, it still looks like a driveway, and it's really no different for emergency vehicle access than a driveway. We can't maintain it. We won't plow it. The property owner will have to do that. They're required to file with us a sort of a statement that we will put in the Registry of Deeds that says, I understand that the city doesn't maintain the section of roadway, that I'm responsible, and I waive damages as a result of the city not maintaining the road and all the rest. But that's where we're at.
Counselor Williams?
Okay, so if we were to take that 10 or 20 feet or whatever it is where the driveway comes in, I really feel like this is someone who's paying taxes. They should be entitled to getting plowed as much as, having the road plowed as much as any of the rest of us. So if we were to try to switch it to another kind of road, what might that look like?
So I would have to look at the geometry up there to figure out if we were to just plow that 10, 20-foot stub, do we have a place to put the snow? Because it would just be a dead end. We would push it in, and then the truck would have to back up. So do we have a place to drop the snow there? I know that's basically right at the bottom of those stairs that you mentioned earlier. So I don't know, where we would put the snow, how we would back up, that sort of thing. I think I'd like to take a look at that before made a recommendation one way or the other. Certainly, I think, city attorney can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the city council could decide to modify the layout of a Class 6 road and make it a Class 5. We would have to upgrade it to meet our Class 5 road standards, so it would be some construction involved. And then that change in status would allow us to do the road maintenance, allow us to pave it and maintain it and what have you. In fact, it would obligate us to at that point. But I think that it wouldn't just be a matter of plowing it. We would have to do some work on the road itself.
Can I ask a question, because we don't have any formal maps in front of us? Is this the extension, does it go all the way to Terrace Street?
So the city council layout that was done in, I should have looked up the dates, but it was 1800s, I believe was the last change, actually went all the way to Reservoir Street. So if you look at like the assessor's mapping, it does show that corridor going all the way to Reservoir Street. And as Councilor Williams pointed out, there's a set of stairs in the middle of this street. This is what, court used to refer to as a paper street. It was put on a subdivision plan at some point in time as it was going to be laid out as a street. It was laid out, but it was never actually built as a city street. I don't know who built the stairs. That was well before my time, so I'm gonna decline to comment on that. But yeah, I would agree that they're not in great shape, and that's a separate issue that we should talk about at some point.
And does the slope of that street prevent it from having a classification change?
So there's nothing that I know of in state law that has a upper bound on road slope. Right now, the steepest slope in the city is Thompson Road, and we're reconstructing that right now. It's about 20%. I think this would probably be pretty close to that, if not maybe even a little bit more. So it is very, very steep. Our current road standards would not allow like a developer to develop a road that steep. We wouldn't accept anything over 15%. But I think that since it's an existing road, we could potentially build it. Again, I'd like to take a closer look before I give you some advice on that.
That's fine. And also not fully the conversation under
Right.
consideration this evening, but I think just to get to Counselor Williams' question, if that was something that you wanted to suggest moving forward, we could have a further look at it. Great. Counselor Jones, before you go, Don, I'm not sure who our questions are for tonight. Counselor Jones?
Actually, I'm not sure who it's for either.
It's for him.
I think I know some of the benefits, some of the detriments to passing this. One of the benefits might be it helps with additional housing. Another benefit is it might increase ratables for taxing. But I'd like to hear from what staff's opinion of what are the benefits and what are the detriments of this project.
So I'll let my colleague chime in. I will say, I think that the most important thing to consider is we're restoring a condition that existed just a few years ago. The applicant is looking to build a house where there was a house for years and years and years. And in that light, I think it really makes a lot of sense to allow this to go forward and just continue doing what was being done until just a short time ago.
So that would be my housing benefit and my rateable benefit.
Correct.
Okay. I didn't know if there are any others or any detriments.
From a public works perspective, barring any further discussion about changing the layout of the road or whatnot, this really doesn't affect public works. Right now, we're not maintaining the road. We won't maintain its Class 6 road / driveway in the future. It doesn't change how we would operate. So in terms of that, I really don't have an opinion.
Thank you. Jess, do you want to?
Same from community development. This is additional housing, and it's and I don't want to speak for Dan, but it's also a property that the city owned or took possession of that will then go back on the tax rolls. That's a good thing for all the residents. I think I think it's a positive thing, and we need housing of all different types in all different parts of the city.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to hear from the petitioner. Yes, come on forward. Please state your name and address for the minute taker.
Yep.
I'm Ken Suskind. I live at 81 Terrace Street. My wife, Monica Marshall, and I have made an offer to purchase this property. We live right above the property, so we are abutters. We live on Terrace Street, 81 Terrace Street, as I say. We are specifically offering to buy this property with the idea of building a not a tiny house, because that's a very specific thing on a chassis, but the equivalent of a tiny house on that property. And honestly, that's about all you can do with this property. It is, we've been out there and we've measured. They had the former owners of this property had a very small house on it, and this would also be a very small house. But that's what our daughter wants, and that's what we would like to, provide for her in a very, very difficult economy, a very, very difficult housing economy. And we are hoping to, actually build sort of a model tiny house, which will both be beneficial to us and our daughter, but also be beneficial to the community at large, in terms of it being a model for what could be done on other property in the city. We know it's a difficult piece of land. It also has the, it also has that, I forget what the term is, but that hill. So it's got, you would know better than me that particular term, you can't build on that hill. And so that's why a tiny house is sort of required. Interestingly enough, we've lived on Terrace Street now for 27 years. And the city has always pushed the snow to the end of that small area that people are describing. And I think the reason they do that is because there's no other place to put it, really. So I understand that it's not the city's responsibility to maintain it. And of course, it would be thrilling if the city wanted to, change that into a Class 6 highway. That would be great. But I think that people have gotten used to what that situation is in the wintertime already. People who walk up and down that particular walkway. It's a sort of an odd walkway. And, as has been stated, there is a driveway that was there and continues to be there. And there is even that sort of building area which continues to be there, which we would almost certainly be using also, that same building area. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone? Okay,
Okay,
thank you. All right, I'd like to open this up to the public at this point. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Yes, Counselor Jones?
About the process, if I may ask the city attorney, with this process goes to the council, there has to be a waiver process to change the class?
No. The classification of the road will remain the same at this point, still at Class 6. But what the statute requires, and this is part of the larger discussion we're going to have, but what the statute requires is that in order to issue a building permit on a Class 6 road, the planning board has to, sort of advise and consent. My understanding from Jesse is that the planning board has done that and is suggesting you go forward. So the process at this point would be, first thing that you should do, because we follow the same rules with the committees as we do on the council, you should suspend the resolution if you're going to go forward with a motion on it. Then you would have a motion relating to this presumably to recommend to the city council that a building permit be authorized for this at that point. And that's what would allow the petitioner to go forward. This is one of the conditions with respect to the purchase and sale agreement. is to, in order to get the building permit, he needs this approval from the city council. And then there is another step, I think, as the city engineer pointed out, with respect to the driveway permit that has to be issued. So there are still a number of steps that have to be satisfied.
Yes, Counselor Jones.
So the suspension process would happen here and at city council
Yes,
also?
well, yes, generally, because we do follow the same rules at the committee meetings that we do at the council meetings.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm looking at our recommendation here, and should the language to recommend that the city council issue the permit, should that also include the suspension as well? Or is that something that we would just talk about at the council meeting?
Well, first you'll move to suspend the resolution.
Here.
Right here. We'll do it again at council. And then once you do that, then you can go forward with the proposed motion, which is to authorize the issuance of the building
But
permit.
you don't want to see a third motion from us to recommend the suspension at full council?
No, because that's really the council's prerogative.
Okay.
But by your doing it, you're indicating to the city council that you're in agreement with suspending the rules.
Okay.
But it is the council's prerogative.
Fair, thank you. Okay, so I guess speaking on the matter before us, I'm in favor of this. I think that this resolution that was drafted and put into effect by the council 24 years ago, we've discussed needs to be revisited in and of itself. And with seeing all the work that this committee has done, I think that this is an easy yes from me. So I don't know if anyone else has any comments that they'd like to make. Counselor Madison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm in agreement with everything you've just said. Our city desperately needs housing, and this resolution, again, was written 24 years ago, is one of those many zoning rules that we've been talking about recently that is contributing to our state's housing crisis. I think it is time to revisit it. I think it is time to suspend it in this matter and allow a small house to be built that will allow what sounds like a young family to actually have a house of their own, which is something that's becoming harder and harder and harder every day for the residents of the city and the citizens of the state.
Great. Counselor Jones?
Thank you. I agree with you, Madam Chair, and for the two benefits that I mentioned earlier. One is, Andrew had mentioned, the housing element of it, and the other is that we're adding to the valuation for the tax rolls, so I agree with it.
Counselor Williams?
Just to say, I agree with these steps we're taking here tonight. I would like to take additional steps to reclassify that road, or at least that bottom section of road, to a Class 5 and figure out what we're going to do with the steps at the top. That is it's a commonly used thoroughfare for people walking up to Terrace Street or walking up to the park from my neighborhood, and it's really in shambles because it's not maintained, and I think we should fix that. But for the problem before us, should I go ahead and make the motion?
Just a sec, Counselor Haas, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a couple things. For the city attorney, are we positioned with our motion here, that will allow the city council to move expeditiously on this, because the applicant has some deadlines coming up?
This will go to the council next week, and presumably the council, I suspect, shares a lot of the same sentiments as the committee here this evening. And but it is the city council. You are the city council. Far be it from me to take the crystal ball out, but assuming everything
Next
goes
week is pretty.
well, next week, assuming everything goes well, then this part of the process will be concluded.
That's pretty expeditious. I want to acknowledge Councilor Williams. He's trying to carp the diem here. If we have opportunity to make improvements associated with other work, we should, but not in this instance, I think. But we will keep this in mind going forward. Third, I want to thank the applicant for pursuing this and utilizing some unused areas. Wouldn't this be a great, as I think you said, that as an example for other areas in the town that we can develop from the interior? So thank you for doing this, and let's move forward. Oh, I wanted to compliment Councilor Madison and Councilor Jones on great haircuts.
Oh, I think Counselor Williams is going to take offense to that. So I think I'm ready for a motion, Counselor Williams. Let's start with our suspension.
Move to suspend Resolution R 2000-28 to allow consideration of this matter.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. We do have a remote participant tonight, so all of our voting will be done by roll call. Do we have any questions on this motion? Seeing none, I'll start with you, Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes,
And it's a yes for me. That means that rule is suspended for us this evening, so we can consider the matter. Do you have a follow-up motion for us?
Move to recommend that City Council authorize the issuance of a building permit for the property at 270 Beaver Street.
Second.
Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Madison.
Yes.
Counselor Haas.
yes.
And that's a yes for me as well. So that will go before full council next week. I wish you luck. And we're excited to see more projects happening here in the city. I think the work that we're doing is going to make a difference. All right, our next item on the agenda is relating to an amendment to the Land Development Code for the charitable gaming facilities, Ordinance O-2023-16-B. And I believe we have our Community Development Director back here with us. We have held a public hearing on this item already, so we will not be taking public comment. We're just going to do a quick recap because it has been several weeks since we've talked about this due to the break, and then we will have the conversation here at the committee about where we want to go.
Good evening again. And I don't know exactly how much to go over, except to say that this was originally introduced back in November, I believe, of last year. And our original proposal was a change to a definition. It just created a definition that followed the RSA definition of charitable gaming facility. Pretty quickly, through conversation with the joint committee and when we took it to council, the realization was that wasn't really the best way to handle this issue. So we went through about, I think it was 3 joint committee meetings, although it may have been 4, to come up with an altered definition as well as some use standards and new zoning district restrictions. So, and I think what that allowed, the work of the joint committee allowed was a lot more, surprisingly, a lot more flexibility. Even though there are now standards that say you have to do this, this, and this, the original option was so narrow as to make it difficult to do this. And so now there's the opportunity, but in a way that I think the joint committee felt really respected the community's interests in this. And so with that sort of history, I'll just sort of run through the areas that it'll be permitted, the zoning district it'll be permitted in, and then I'll try and go very quickly through the use standards. And please stop me wherever if you want any background on that or a little bit more. So charitable gaming facilities are permitted in the Commerce zoning district and now I'm going to go through all these areas, along West Street between the bypass and Island Street, on Winchester Street, south of Island Street and north of Cornwall, Commerce land along Key Road, and also along Kit Street, and then Commerce zone land on Ashbrook Road, and Commerce zone land along South Main Street, south of Route 101 and north of Silent Way. So it's quite a bit of space, and what we tried to do, working with the joint committee, was find those areas that have a lot of activity already, and are sort of really commerce-oriented, sort of bigger, car-oriented development. And then in terms of the use standards, I started going through the use standards this afternoon, and realized I could sort of break it down into really just two short sections. One is no facility shall be within 500 feet of another charitable gaming facility, or within 250 feet of a place of worship, school, daycare facility, single or two-family dwelling, or residential zoning district. And I really, as we started to game out what this meant, I think that's an important place to look at. One is there are a lot of single and two-family houses in non-conforming zoning districts, non-traditional residential zoning districts, and that's a pretty big restriction. So you have, for example, off of West Street, there are a lot of areas that are zoned commerce but have single-family homes. Just through the vagaries of zoning, that's how that ended up. And so that's going to be a restriction on where these can go. In addition, the residential zoning district, there are a couple spots where we see more intense residential development, but they're actually in commerce zones. And so if you're looking at to put in a charitable gaming facility, but you abut a property that has multifamily on it, if it's a multifamily in a residential zoning district, you can't put it there. But if it's a multifamily in a commerce zone, you can, as long as you meet all of the other dimensional standards for the commerce zone. And then the other thing, and I went on way longer than I expected, the other thing there were a number of parking restrictions that have to do with the fact that we expect buses and sort of heavier, more intense types of traffic related with this. But I think the two biggest changes we looked at were 0.75 parking spaces per gaming position, which is a new definition in the zoning code that I'll be talking about next. And then 2% or 2 spaces are required to be equipped with electrical vehicle charging stations. And that's really it.
Great. I think that one of the things that I'll say about this process is that sometimes we start doing something thinking that it's simple, and we end up educating ourselves. And I think that that's what we saw happen here. I think that there was some intention moving into this, but through the process, through some really educated members of the public, and then as well as bringing in the New Hampshire Gaming Commission, and we also started to educate ourselves, which is why we're seeing a B version of this.
Yes.
I know Councillor Jones doesn't love B versions. We try to avoid them. But this is one of those times where I think we did the right thing by sending it back to Joint Committee a second time and getting to this version. We've spent a lot of time working to get here and compromising and working with the planning board and who are other members of our community to really make sure that we're making good choices. So I think that we've come up with a really solid ordinance, and I'm happy to see it back to us.
I did want to mention one other thing, sorry to interrupt, but I was not here for the public hearing, but I did hear back that there was one question about bingo, and whether this ordinance would mean that churches or other charitable organizations couldn't hold bingo in their buildings. And in speaking with the city attorney and sort of talking with staff, we really feel that that's an accessory use for those types of uses, and so isn't regulated through this at all. So would be allowed to continue.
Great, thank you. Yes, Councillor Jones.
Just a procedural question. Are we putting the cart before the horse? Should we be doing the definition before we call it a use?
I'll let the city attorney.
No. The problem is, and it's not going to happen, but it could happen, that we insert the definition in there and then decide not to adopt the ordinance, and then we have this sort of definition being orphaned in the definitional section. So we want to make sure that you want the charitable gaming ordinance in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, I think I'm ready to accept a motion.
Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2023-16-B.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Madison, seconded by Counselor Williams. Any questions on this motion, anyone? Counselor Jones?
I think we all knew right from the beginning that I wouldn't be supporting this. I don't think we should be separating gaming out as this malicious device. I think it's just a form of entertainment. It's no different than having a movie theater, a penny arcade, or anything else, and we're putting these specific restrictions on an issue that other cities are using to bring more money into their community. We know I haven't liked it from the beginning, so I'll be voting no.
Great. Counselor Williams?
Just to say, I disagree with the esteemed counselor. I think gambling in general is very bad news. We've seen an explosion of gambling across the country with the legalization of sports betting. Casinos used to be, Nevada and Atlantic City, and now they're everywhere. A lot of people are getting harmed by this. People are gambling away their savings, gambling away their spouse's savings, gambling away their kids' college fund. It happens. You don't necessarily see it because it's something that kind of happens, in the dark of a casino and behind closed doors. But the stats I've seen said, about 1% of adults have a serious gambling problem every year. That's going to be people in our community. People are going to be harmed by this. If I could vote to have no casinos in Keene whatsoever, I would vote that way. But this is what we have, so I'll be voting for this.
Counselor Williams? I'm sorry, Counselor Madison?
It's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to agree with my colleague, Councilor Williams. I'm not a gambler. I don't really have enough money to be gambling, and usually I waste my money on other pointless gadgets around my house. Gambling is a problem, and anyone who doesn't think it is, I'd suggest trying to get a coffee at a gas station in the morning when you get stuck behind someone going, yeah, I'll take 6 of those ones and 7 of those, and then I'll scratch them here at the counter and then cash them in while you're trying to buy your coffee. That was supposed to be a joke, by the way, guys. Come on. It's not. I feel like we've parsed out the areas where it is okay, where we do want that level of parking, where we do want that level of attraction. We want downtown to be, business friendly, but also family friendly. And I think this is a good way to make that happen. So I'm in support of this.
I don't want to belabor the point at all, but I will say anecdotally, I now have a teenager who is away at school, and even children who are not old enough to be gambling are gambling, and it's happening online. And I'm hearing about it on college campuses. I'm hearing about students who are thousands of dollars in debt to bookies, and this is a real problem. I think we're going to find that the more we ask questions about it, the more we're going to hear these stories, and the more we're going to see the effects of what the online gambling is going to do, let alone what the brick and mortar places are. I do think that there is a component that is entertainment. If I go to a casino, which has happened a few times in my life, I take $20, whatever I would spend on a movie or on a show to go see it, and that is what I spend. But that is not the normal person that's sitting there. So I think we did a very good job of crafting an ordinance that, while we can't prohibit, does create really good boundaries around what we want to see in this community, and I'm happy with where we ended up. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tend to agree with Councillor Jones that, far be it for us to judge other people's behaviors and desires. However, we do know there's community feelings around how neighborhoods should evolve. So I see this as one step forward, maybe one step sideways. We'll find out how it develops as we go forward, and I think it's a great starting point to both respect personal responsibility and independence, growth of business, and also contain a potential problem. So thank you.
Great. Counselor Jones?
Yeah, I will be voting no, but I'm willing to bet that it passes.
All right, I'm going to start with you, Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
No.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me. That will be moving forward to council with 4-1 in the affirmative to adopt. The next item is going back to Counselor Jones' question, the definition. So now that we've said that we're interested in seeing this ordinance be adopted by council, we have to add the definition into the zoning code. Jesse, do you want to tune that up?
Sure, I'm nothing to tune up. I just want to sort of point out this is also a B version, and not because it went through the same evolution as the larger discussion. I think what we did was early on, we put together a definition, realized through conversation with the public that we had missed bingo and lucky 7, which are a part of the RSA but exist in a different section. So we added that in, and then as we drafted the use standards, we realized we were seeing the utility of this idea of gaming position, and so we added a definition of gaming or for gaming position to this ordinance. So that's why you're seeing a B version and that evolution over time.
Counselor Jones?
Thank you. And I agree with the definition. Can I just throw out for instance, though? We've, in Keene, we've turned down Keno twice on the referendum. Should that happen where it does, you know it's going to come again because the Lottery Commission keeps sending it back every couple of years. Should it ever pass, how will that fit into this definition? Would we need to reword it, or would it be treated like bingo? Because according to the state,
Right.
anybody with a liquor license has the right to allow Keno.
Right.
So that falls outside the realm of that ordinance we just passed.
That's correct. And so that's how I would answer it. It's a different animal, I guess. It is regulated differently and therefore wouldn't be affected by this.
Thank you.
Great. All right, so this item did not have a public hearing. We will allow public comment on this. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak about the definition? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Sure.
I would move to recommend the, sorry, my mic's off. I would move to recommend the adoption of ordinance 2023-17-B.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Madison. Do we have any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Madison.
Yes.
Counselor Haas.
Yes.
And that's a yes for me. All right, so we'll see all of that back at council next week. And we will get into it there for any further conversation relating to whether or not we want to see this go together as a package. So the last item tonight, which I feel like most of you are probably here to discuss with us, are our council rules of order amendments. We have our city attorney here who's going to walk us through. And we have done a couple of things to get us to the place we're at right now. The council did hold a full workshop where they recommended, we looked at several sections of our rules and we made recommendations of things that we'd like to see changed, and those came back in a draft version to the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee, where we further massaged some language and sent it up for first reading at council. So this is going to be our last opportunity here before the council will make a decision about what they want to adopt and see. City Attorney, if we made any changes at this point, what would happen, just so we understand the process?
Well, my hair can't get any grayer, so we We have been discussing the rules, as you know, for quite some time. You're free to make recommended changes to this if you wanted. It would have to go back to the city council at this point, and
Okay.
the city council could then determine whether they wanted to just accept whatever the recommended changes were at that point, or to send it back for further discussion.
Okay. All right, so on page 25, we have the final draft for the PLD review. And we'll start, I think each of these, we've asked in the past to have each of these amendments have its own motion so
Yes.
that the council can decide on them individually. So let's just start at the top. Amendment number 1 is special meetings and workshop meetings.
Yes, so on that one, as we've discussed all along, the reason for the changes here were to codify within the rules the question of workshops and what happens with respect to calling a workshop, what can happen at a workshop meeting. As you know, there was, over the years, there's been, there was a pattern of practice to call workshops, but the question that arose was, well, what can you do within them? So the decision was to sort of put it down into the rules that a workshop can be called. It has to be called for a specific kind of purpose. The language does lay out how the workshop can be called. It does restrict, once you're in the workshop, to the votes that can be taken at this point, and that was to satisfy the question of whether or not the city council should be taking votes within the workshop. The city council can recommend having it being sent back to the appropriate committee with some discussion about a potential recommendation, but those are essentially the limitations on it at this point. And just to remind everybody that a workshop is a public meeting of the city council. That doesn't necessarily mean the public has the right to participate or to speak. That's certainly up to the council at that point, but it is a public meeting and the public is invited to attend.
Great. All right, any comments from the committee or questions? Counselor Madison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess it's more of a concern. I've been noticing that in the last few years, we've been having a lot of workshops and a lot of special meetings. Sometimes I've honestly felt like some of the workshops we've had have been repetitive. Sometimes we're discussing the same items over and over again, or we're having a workshop on fiscal policy coming up. We've had that before. I think we've had it in the last year. We have it every year. Do we need to have it every year? I think we need to start looking at how often we're having these, because every time we meet, it costs the city money. It costs the city money to open this room. It costs the city money to have the city manager or deputy city manager here. It costs the city money to have the city attorney here. It costs the city money to have the assistant city attorney here. It costs the city money to have staff here to help run these meetings. If we're just running a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, then we're kind of wasting the taxpayers' dollars. So I think we need to start seriously considering how often we're having these workshops and meetings and really start narrowing in on whether they're necessary or we're just having them for the sake of having them or for the sake of tradition or because someone wants to hear their own voice. It's something I've been thinking is getting frustrating as a counselor, and I think it's getting frustrating as a taxpayer to see this much money be used for meetings that are often repetitive or, just unnecessary.
Okay. Thank you for the comments. Counselor Jones?
Yeah, I think Andrew was exactly right, but I don't think that would change anything in this motion here. But I do agree with him, and maybe we should take a look into that in the future.
Counselor Haas or Counselor Williams, you want to weigh in? No? I see your point, Counselor Madison. I think that there are definitely appropriate times for workshops. We've seen them really work when we're working on big projects and we have to get some consensus at council before we get into the nitty-gritty. And I'm just going to use the downtown project as an example. That is a time when I feel like it really worked, right? Like we got all of us into a room. We were able to have fluid conversation about what we wanted to see, and then we sent it off to MSFI to hammer out all of the details. That's an appropriate place to put us into workshop mode, but it is difficult to see workshops happening on things that are very familiar to us as counselors and that could happen at committee levels. And I think that we can ask our mayor to kind of keep an eye on that for us, and make sure that we're using our time in the best way possible. So I know after coming back from summer break, I highlighted the amount of meetings I did not attend this summer over those few weeks, and the amount of time I got back with my family, so that was great. So I definitely want to make sure that we're spending our time in this room appropriately. But as far as how we want to use these and when it's appropriate to use them, I think we did a great job of coming up with that number. I think this committee altered that number at one of our last meetings, and came up with 2 members of each committee coming together to be able to call a special meeting or a workshop, in the absence of the mayor being able to do that. And that was really smart and thoughtful. And I appreciate all the effort that you guys have put into making these amendments what they are sitting before us. So this one, I think I'm gonna support the way it sits, but I think what you're saying is well heard. Anyone else have any comments on this one before we go to the public? No? All right, I'm gonna open the floor up to the public to comment on special meetings and workshop meetings under section 2. I don't see anyone wishing to speak, so I would be ready for a motion.
Move to recommend the adoption of Amendment 1, Section 2, special meetings and workshop meetings.
And I second.
Motion by Counselor Williams, seconded by Counselor Madison. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Madison.
Yes.
Counselor Haas.
Yes,
And that's a yes for me, so we'll see that one with unanimous vote back at council. Amendment number 2, section 11, right to the floor. City Attorney?
Sure, thank you. The only change in this from the original language, which reads, when recognized by the chair, a member shall rise in his or her place, respectfully address the mayor or temporary chair, et cetera. What the committee recommended was the language that says, member shall rise in his or her place, comma, if able, and shall respectfully address. And I think the intention there was with respect to individuals who, because the rule was mandatory, this allowed an individual to basically opt out of that if they were not able.
Yes, thank you. Any comments from the committee? Counselor Jones?
I think, Tom, we're talking about here, the key is we're changing shall to should.
I don't believe, I thought we had discussion
We-
about that.
It was staying
It
shall.
says, it remains as shall. For all intents and purposes, shall and should, I think as our last discussion we talked about, are essentially the same at this point. But it's the
I'm
committee
seeing
is
should in
free,
my notes here.
the committee is
It's
free to
in
change
the-
that.
There's a
Oh, okay.
red-lined version, or blue-lined version.
Okay, I'm reading the wrong place. Okay, thank you.
Are you on page 29?
No, I'm on the open.
Okay, yep, you gotta get to page 29. Okay. Any comments from the committee? Seeing, Counselor Williams?
Yeah, just to say that the purpose of this is to make it so, someone who is feeling infirmed someday doesn't necessarily have to say that in front of the city council and the entire public, but can keep that information private where it belongs. And so I think this addresses that, and I appreciate that.
Great. And I'm gonna open this one up to the public.
Hi, Kat Workman, Colorado Street. It's weird to be on this side of things. I want to start by first acknowledging the hard work that you guys have done and heard all the comments on this. But I'm coming forward to you guys tonight as a citizen and more so as chair of the Monadnock Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Coalition to just recommend that we change the wording to may stand instead of shall. May would then set it for the default would be to sit, but still allow those who would like to stand to do so. As I've previously highlighted, the city has a responsibility to lead by example and to make society and/or all environments as barrier-free as possible, and anticipate the needs of others without burdening them with having to request an accommodation. I have heard a lot of arguments justifying the need to continue to stand, and I would like to take a moment just to kind of debunk those. So we've heard that standing is necessary because it maintains decorum, formality, and tradition, which Councilor Madison just made a statement about tradition. And while the latter is true, this thinking is quite antiquated and stems from pretty puritanical societal social norms and cultural norms that typically emphasize male dominance and authority when men, dominance and authority, and at a time when men were expected to be the primary speakers and decision makers. Traditional reasons for standing were to command authority and presence, increase visibility and engagement, and project leadership. It was seen as necessary to assert authority and command respect. As far as maintaining decorum and control of the meeting, nothing would change. The mayor would still have to recognize a counselor before they were to speak. Counselors don't stand and interrupt one another now, so why would we anticipate that they would start, just with the change of the rules? And then the chairs of the standing committees are also able to maintain control of meetings when standing is not necessary. So we've shown that it doesn't change the state of decorum for meetings. During COVID, we updated our media system, so there's no logistical reason to stand. In fact, doing so can actually be a disservice. If you're particularly tall, you're further away from the mic. And then the cameras in here either pan to and isolate the speaker. And we have the two screens here that will also make sure that the speaker, if they're seated, will still be visible to the public or the people in the audience. And both allow for folks at home and in the audience to see people just fine. And if there's a further problem, I think I mentioned this in workshop, if it's a matter of prioritizing the speaker and the audience members visually to see each other, then the solution should be to reconfigure the change of desks here. Not to change the rules. And while the outcome may end up being the exact same as with the change, I foresee, because I foresee many counselors will continue to stand, it does send a powerful and impactful message to the community. It will show that the council is being intentional and mindful in terms of accessibility, cultural sensitivity, because in some cultures, the expectation to stand while speaking may not align with their customs, which can impose an external norm, which creates internal conflict, discomfort, and can lead to resistance. Some people may also be more comfortable expressing themselves when seated instead of standing. It's been proven to create a psychological barrier and may actually negatively impact participation, especially in high pressure situations. What I'm asking is that the council balance the benefits of standing, which I can see none, to the potential barriers it creates. The solution of disclosing to the mayor your reason for not standing puts the responsibility on the person who needs the accommodation and makes them disclose personal information unnecessarily. This should be a no-brainer change because it shows growth, flexibility, and inclusion, which aids in fostering an inclusive and supportive environment and community. And I know that was a bit of a sociology lesson, but I appreciate the time. And again, I think the change would still accomplish what I think we're all trying to do. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this one? Was that a hand? No? No? No?
Sure. I was going to say, yeah, I know. Just ditto to what Kat said.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna bring it back to the committee to discuss it. Is there anyone who wants to get us started? Counselor Jones?
Yeah, as you know, I've been somewhat opposed to this because for many years we had the unwritten rule that you would stand when addressing the dais out of respect for the dais, but when speaking to presenters, you remained in your seat. That always worked, but this isn't something I'm going to lose sleep over. I will vote for well, tonight anyway, I'll vote for the recommendation, and we'll see where it goes.
Counselor Haas? Counselor Williams? I can't see you over there. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to say that I appreciate the sociology lesson from Counselor Workman. We've had this discussion at length, and I don't think an amendment here would be likely to pass, but maybe look for an amendment at council.
I was gonna follow up and say that as well. I think tonight I want to see this move forward to council, and this is a much bigger conversation to have on the full floor with all of us present. I think that we, can make these small changes here at committee, and things can get turned around and sent back to us, and we make a change and it gets sent back. And the way to make the final determination is to get the 15 of us in a room and let us offer an amendment and see where it goes. All right, I'm ready for a motion.
I would move to recommend the adoption of Amendment Number 2, Section 11, right of floor.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Madison. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes?
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
And that one's a yes for me. That'll go to council, and hopefully we'll hear more from you there, Counselor Workman. Next, I don't want to lose track because we have a lot to get through. I think we're Amendment 3, Section 15, voting and conflicts of interest. City
Yes.
Attorney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot of text here, and it's there because you needed the context to be able to see it. But the real changes here were in the first paragraph of the text, defining what constitutes an immediate family member for purposes of a conflict of interest, and just for the public's benefit, voting in conflict of interest. This rule basically says that if a member of the city council in particular, or in certain circumstances, their immediate family member may have an interest different from the public in a matter that's before the city council, that individual councilor should recuse themselves from considering that. That's the purpose of this rule. And from the discussions that have occurred previously, the question was sort of broadening the rule out a bit more with respect to the definition of an immediate family. So in the first paragraph, the change there was to add an individual 18 years of age or older to differentiate from younger, individuals within the family. So that phrase was added in that section. The more significant change to this rule occurred in the last paragraph in connection with the filing of a statement of interest form. The City Council a number of years ago decided that each councilor should file a statement of interest with the clerk's office, which is a public record, in order for the public to have transparency with respect to what, boards, commissions, organizations, your employer, that sort of thing, the councilor had a connection with.
The prior rule limited that to the statement of interest to the mayor and each city councilor. The proposed change is to also include in the filing of the statement of interests, the interests that may occur from the respective immediate family members, which was previously defined in the first paragraph. So it broadens it out so that immediate family members, as well as the mayor or the councilor, should identify in the statement of interest, as it says, any board, commission, organization, association, or other entity which the mayor, the council, or immediate family member is a member of, or and whether or not the person holds a leadership position in that organization. The leadership position was important because we like to encourage the city councilors, the mayor, family members to be involved in the community. And if you just happen to be a member of an organization but don't have a controlling role in the organization, it's not necessary for you or your immediate family member to report that. So that's in substance the proposed amendment to this rule.
Great. Any committee member want to have any comments? Counselor Williams?
I guess my reading goes against what you just said, so let's see if we can clarify that. It says, any board, commission, organization, association, or other entity which the mayor, council, or immediate family is a member of, and whether or not the person holds a leadership position. So it says if they're a member of this organization, if they're an immediate family member, they do have to submit
Yes, I
something.
agree
Okay.
with that tune-up. They're supposed to identify that, but also whether you hold the position in it. So I agree with that. That was the intent.
Okay,
is that you
that's-
also list those.
that's a little
I
different from what I
apologize
heard,
for
but we're
skipping
good.
over that a little bit.
Okay, just in general, if I could say, I ran for office, my immediate family members did not. I feel like this puts a burden on them that they didn't ask for, and that's why I will be voting against this.
Anyone else from the committee? Counselor Jones?
Once again, this is the one that I did have a problem with, the statement of interest. Similar to what Bobby said, spouses and offspring are not elected officials. I don't think they should be committed to putting where they work and what committees they belong to on a public document. I just don't think that's fair. If there is a potential conflict, the counselor has the ability to announce that conflict should a vote where that possible conflict could occur. So I will be voting no also.
Counselor Madison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to my esteemed colleagues, I will be voting yes for this one. When you run for office, you make a choice to run for office, and that choice affects the people around you. And their financial interest, their personal interest, the things that they are concerned or that are important to them are going to, for better or worse, impact how you make decisions on the council. So when you run for council, you need to think about how the votes you make are impacting those you care about most, and those you care about most are going to impact the votes you make. So I think it's fair for the public to know how you're being influenced. And along those lines, I personally don't think this goes far enough. I think counselors need to disclose where they're receiving campaign funds from. Because I know we've discussed this, I know there's some eye rolls, but as we've been seeing, there's been a lot of money flowing into Keene elections, a lot of it coming from out of state and out of town. And I think the people of Keene have a right to know where the people who sit in these chairs are receiving campaign funds from. So personally, I think on the annual disclosure form, we should be putting any campaign contributions. I'm not going to make an amendment now. I may make an amendment in council next week. I kind of want to move on, but that's my thought. I will be voting in favor of this. I think it's fair to ask counselors to disclose where the money coming into their household is coming from. I think that is something potential candidates should consider before making the choice to run for office. No one's forcing you to run for office. And I think we need to strengthen these rules to provide more public disclosure as to where we're getting money from.
Counselor Haas?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think openness in government is of great value, and more the better. I think what would happen in the absence of such disclosure is that it could be invented by disgruntled parties who might be taking exception to something. And if we have a strong disclosure statement as part of our rules, we may keep things a little more above board. So I think openness and disclosure in government is always good. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know I've explained my position on this one several times, and hearing each of you out this evening just reminds me of how I personally feel or have felt in the past. My husband's employer comes to this city and asks for funds every year as part of our nonprofit fund, or, raising contributions. It puts me in a very difficult position if I don't recuse myself, that my decision here on the floor could negatively impact my spouse's employment and how they would perceive me voting in favor or not in favor of a contribution from the city, and that it could negatively impact him. And so in that way, this actually protects his employment and protects me and my transparency. And so I appreciate having these rules. I've also seen them inadvertently abused. I've seen counselors who've sat on boards in authoritative positions ask us to increase the funding that we offer to nonprofit organizations through our budget process on the floor without disclosure. And it's made me super uncomfortable that, yes, that money is not going directly to that individual, but that is certainly, there's a very gray line there. And I think we all need to know where those lines are. And not that anyone is doing any of these, making any of these decisions out of some sort of malice. But I think that there's not necessarily, out of doing something good, you might be asking for support from an organization that you're attached to. But there is a reason that there are 15 of us. There are 14 other people who can, from a detached perspective, make that decision, I think, without some sort of sway. And so what these forms do, they allow each of us to hold the other accountable, and it helps us, protect ourselves when we need to make a recusal for something. So I do think there's a line. I do think that I would draw that line at spouses. I don't think children should be involved. I know we had discussed that. I think we made this adults in the home. I would be open to hearing a way of tightening that up, but I do think that there needs to be this disclosure in place and that it needs to be public. All right, I'm open to hearing from the public on this one. Counselor, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jacob Favalis, 229 Main Street. I am not certain how I feel about this. I think that Counselor Williams' argument is compelling that, those of us on council ran for office and our family, immediate or otherwise, or over 18 or otherwise, did not. And I don't actually know how healthy it is to be involving counselors' families in the political process. With that said, it is a hard sell for me to vote against increased transparency for some of the reasons that Counselor Madison and yourself have described. What I'm going to ask the committee to do tonight is vote to send this to council, where I think there can be maybe fuller discussion with additional perspectives. So not saying that I support it, but I do think it's appropriate to move it to full council.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? All right, I think I'm ready for a motion. Counselor Madison?
Move to recommend the adoption of Amendment Number 3, Section 15, Voting and Conflicts of Interest.
I'll vote as the second to get it on the floor.
Thank you. Motion by Counselor Madison, seconded by Counselor Jones. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll start a vote. Counselor Williams?
No.
Counselor Jones?
No.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
And I guess I'm going to break that tie, and that's a yes for me. It's going to go to council. We'll have the bigger discussion there. In a lot of these, I think as we keep going here, you're going to see that that's going to be the general opinion. We've got to get these in front of all 15 of us so we can make that final decision. Next is Amendment 4, Section 25, Communications.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a couple of components, 3 components essentially to the proposed amendments with Section 25. 2 of them are essentially housekeeping. We moved from Rule 26, the deadline for the city clerk to accept communications up until 4 p.m. On the Tuesday preceding the council meeting. It just made more sense to have that in this section that dealt specifically with communications. And the other one was to move also the language with respect to personal, defamatory, or argumentative communications not being accepted by the clerk. The more fundamental change to Section 25, and I suspect the reason why there are some people in the room, is the council's sort of past pattern and practice. And I know there was a lot of discussion about that. I did do a little looking at this. I think the last time that the city council actually accepted a communication that had something to do with sort of larger issues outside of the city was in 2019. And then the city council just at that point sort of had a pattern and practice not wanting to act on those. So the proposal was to codify that in the rule. And for purposes of the public, and quoting from the language at this point, it says, communications requesting that the city council consider matters not germane to either the state or to the city, or over which the city council lacks the authority to take any action shall not be agendized by the city clerk, provided, however, that the city clerk shall place such communications into the councilors' mailboxes. And the reason for that, provided, however, was sort of as a safety valve. The city council has the right to suspend its rules, and quite frankly, the city clerk doesn't want to be in the position of having to arbitrarily make a decision like that. So the communication of that nature, if there is one, will be available to the city councilors. And if an individual city councilor decided that they thought that this was something the city council in general should discuss, they could request a suspension of this rule, remembering that a suspension of the council rules does require a 2/3 vote of the city council. So that's essentially the substantive change to Section 25.
So, quick question, as you're saying all of that, the one thing that I don't see addressed here is what if a counselor directly writes a letter?
I think that, counselors are basically members of the public.
So it would follow the same process?
It would
as a
follow
public letter.
exactly the same
Okay,
process.
Great. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yep.
Because we've had some discussion about whether or not a counselor could bring a letter forward or whether or not that would still require a suspension.
It would still require the suspension, remembering that city councilors are free to submit communications to the full city council, but when you are doing that, you are acting in your individual capacity and not your capacity as a member of the body.
Great. Good clarification.
Quick question for city attorney.
Yes, Counselor Madison?
Thank you. So we've talked about the council disciplinary process before. The way that would kick off is a counselor sending in a letter to the council. Would that, if a normal citizen did that, not a member of the council, a member of the public, sent in a letter asking the council to commence the disciplinary process against the counselor, would that constitute personal, defamatory, or argumentative?
Well, under that rule, isn't directly before us this evening, but having been the author of that particular rule at the time that it was created, and it is a very difficult process to get through.
Yep. It is intentionally designed to be a difficult process to get through because you are elected officials.
But under the rule, bringing it, not having it right in front of me at the moment, that process cannot be triggered by a member of the public.
and there was a specific discussion and reason for that. Because otherwise, you open it up sort of to political issues. In order to trigger the disciplinary rule, it requires, the members of the city council or the mayor to actually trigger the rule. So in answer to your question, a communication like that wouldn't be accepted because there's no authority to do it. We would probably suggest to that individual, or the city clerk would probably suggest to that individual, especially depending upon the nature of the request, would be to please contact one of your city councilor or the mayor and have that discussion with them.
Thank you. That was just a thought I had reading it.
Great. Anyone else? Counselor Williams?
Thank you. I guess my concern is over just what exactly is a communication, and it seems like this is a mechanism being used to shut out discussion of some things. You mentioned the thing in 2019, but I remember, a more recent one, which was Medicare for All. I know there were some concerns with that. Not everybody supported it, but it did end up going up with a 10-2 vote, because that's a, it was initially considered, well, we shouldn't discuss this because this is a, this is a state issue. This is a national issue. But when we drill down to it, we're like, okay, well, this is how it affects the city of Keene. This, and this. I mean, we're faced with very high health insurance costs, and certainly this was a relevant thing. So we voted for Medicare for All. When we talk about communications here, I'm a bit concerned about the mechanism of just putting it in a counselor's mailbox. That's going to require some very heavy lifting on the part of some counselor to then take this communication and get 2/3 majority of other counselors to vote for it when, according to 91A, I don't even think they're allowed to talk to that many counselors in advance. So I don't see this much as a way to get, it's technically a way that you could get it passed, but it puts a very high barrier to people who are, bringing petitions to our city council. And when people bring petitions to us, I don't take that lightly. Especially, in this recent petition where, they had like 90 signatures, 60 of which were from people in Keene. Signing a petition, especially on, some of the topics these folks have signed petitions on, that's a risky thing. That's a strong political step you're taking, and people, people get fired for signing petitions like that. So if people are willing to sign petitions and bring them to the council, I think it's very important that we at least listen to what they have to say, and if we then say, well, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We do not feel this is within the scope of what the city council should be talking about. That's a valid response. It can be dismissed in committee. But to put that in the rules, and well, first of all, putting it in the rules now kind of suggests it wasn't in the rules a few weeks ago. Clearly, I'm the only one who felt that way. I didn't get any seconds when I suggested we talk about it more. But people have a First Amendment right to petition their government, and if we're really shutting off that avenue of discussion, I have a problem with that. But to look at the specific text of this, I'm concerned. Well, it says communications. When it says communications, it seems to assume communications from everybody. It doesn't say. So if I were to send something that would be well, the city clerk would be to determine would be not germane because it was a national issue, whatever, they could put that on the shelf. I don't really like the idea of putting the city clerk in that place. If it was a communication from, say, a committee, if it was a communication from the Human Rights Committee, are we going to treat that like we treat every other communication? And then, you know, this process of putting it in the mailbox. So can you explain to me what, if I put it in the mailbox, where in the city code does it tell me what, if something's in the mailbox, and I want to communicate that this is something we should talk about, how do I do that in a way where I'm not then sending a communication that could subsequently be rejected?
Yes, City Attorney.
Thank you. I know, Counselor, that you're sort of directing your comments directly at me, and I just want to remind the committee that I'm acting as the scrivener and trying to put into words what you have all talked about over the last number of months. This is a policy of the City Council, and you have the right to do whatever you want with it at that point. Back to your specific question, when it goes into the mailbox under this, because every city councilor, as you know, has access to and should use and look in the mailbox. And if there is a communication that's in there, what you would need to do is at a city council meeting, inform the city councilors, we all received this particular communication. I think this is a communication that the council should consider. And I would like to entertain or submit a motion to suspend the rule so that we can send it to committee for further consideration. The city councilor can do that if you want to. Frankly, even if it's not on the specific agenda for that evening, a councilor can raise as a point of order with the mayor and the city council. We've received this. I think it requires some action, and I'd like to see if we can suspend the rules to do that. That would be the process by which you would do it. And if the city council decided at that point to suspend the rule, then the mayor would send it to the appropriate committee for further consideration at that point.
I'd also, I don't know that the city attorney is going to have this answer, but I also feel like the topic that you were mentioning that happened in 2019 was the Medicare for All topic.
That's what I thought.
I don't want to date myself, but I remember that discussion. I think it was prior to you joining council, wasn't it?
No, because I voted on it.
You did vote on that?
Yeah.
So it would have been early on in 2020 for the Medicare for All?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know during COVID, we were inundated with requests for topics at national level because of the access to the council through the Zoom process. We were hearing from, PLD certainly was hearing from lots of people from the Carolinas and Florida, and were joining our Zoom meetings and leaving comment for us. I think that certainly tightened up the council's resolve to wonder and question about where some of these, what the purpose was. Were these coming from Keene residents? Were these issues really concerns of local constituents, or were these national organized groups that were finding maybe one local representative and then bringing in a group of people from outside of even the state of New Hampshire to speak to some of the topics and to just get airtime for them? I think we've seen it on several different occasions, even outside of our county, where we had people from different parts of adjacent communities that were the primary speakers on some of the topics that were coming before us. So I do think personally that there is a mechanism, and regardless of whether there's a ability to have a prior conversation with counselors under 91A, that if you can make a full case at council, that there are a lot of counselors who are willing to listen to topics that they think that there could be a connection to the community. Because I also supported the Medicare for All because I saw the tie directly to the community. I saw the financial impact that a policy like that would have on our citizens and on our city government. So I think if you can sell that at a full council meeting, you could get your 2/3 majority. But I think it's gotta be a big sell, and I think it's gotta probably be a financial impact to the community or some sort of very large social impact, which would, I think, need to far exceed the financial impact. But if it was a topic that you could make those ties to the community, you would have counselors that would be willing to support you. So I see this as a little bit of a win here. It does help to resolve some of the policy of practice and nothing that was formally written, but it also gives us an opportunity to revisit. And I'm a counselor who is really terrible at checking their mailbox. And so every week at full council, the clerk's office does deliver to our desks the contents of our mailbox. So we have access to every communication that the clerk deems appropriate for us to see that comes in through the mailbox at our desks every 2 weeks. So I don't think things will be lost. Counselor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the words from Councilor Williams and especially from City Attorney clarifying how we could still pursue something. On a lighter point, perhaps, it's interesting to me that having an email address is required for a communication to be accepted. Is that something that we should have saying as if available? Are we obligating everybody to have email today? We might be. That could be the way we are now. But I would like to see it say if available, but we can take that up at council.
If different, an email and an email address. So the way you're reading that, City Attorney, is that a requirement? Was that an intentional requirement?
This was language that was in the existing rule, and this is a city clerk area that the city attorney is reluctant to insert himself into.
Okay, fair enough.
And it would be better to have this conversation at the council level.
Okay, will we be able to hear from the clerk?
I'm sure she will weigh in on it.
Okay, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that if different applies to the mailing address if it's not the same as the physical address.
Right, so that would be a requirement for an email
Correct,
address.
that's how I'm reading it.
Okay. And we could make an amendment on the floor?
Yes.
Okay. I like that catch, Counselor Huss. Counselor Jones?
Thank you. As you all know, this is something I've been asking for a while now. I've tried to get it into past documents like this. I also tried to get it into the city council goals at one time, but it didn't have a procedure like we're showing now. So this makes it much better. And I kind of look at it from a perspective of representing the taxpayer. From a business perspective, every time we do a resolution or something like that, the process is, it goes through a department head, it goes through legal, it goes through the city manager, it goes through the city clerk. That is a valued time. We don't have a specific dollar amount on that, but it's probably $1,000 or more. By the time we get to that, to get to something that is not even city business. And that concerns me. And the other point I want to make is, once a petitioner gets something on the agenda, it no longer belongs to them. It's now in our hands. If a petitioner sends a letter saying, we ask the federal government to declare war on Canada, it comes to us that way. We can then say, well, we want to declare war on Canada and Australia and amend it to say that. So I don't think it's the proper way to get your thoughts across and to work on national issues.
Counselor Madison, anything to add?
Oh, well, he took my opinion on the declaration of war against Canada out of my breath. I'm kidding.
Keeping it lively at 8:30.
I always try. Yeah, I do have a few comments. One of the comments my colleague, Councilor Williams, stated is that there is a First Amendment right to petition your government. I believe in that. That is sacred. That is one of our most basic rights. But the right to petition doesn't always grant the right to the floor. If I send a letter to the New Hampshire State Legislature, I'm probably not going to get led onto the floor to address them. I have a lot of things that I'd like the state legislature to do. Most of them involve them going away. But I can't ask that. I can't send a letter in and I expect to, be able to go into the legislature and speak before them. Same thing with Congress. If I sent a letter to the county, I certainly wouldn't expect to be able to speak before the Board of Commissioners. There's another part of that statement that I kind of want to address. The people have a right to petition their government. Their government. Not someone else's government. We are the government of the city of Keene, New Hampshire. Our authority ends at the city line of Keene, New Hampshire. It's kind of a really basic concept. We are not the government of Gilsum. We are not the government of Dublin. We are not the government of Peterborough. We are not the government of Swansea. We are not the government of Chesterfield. I could continue with the couple of other 100 New Hampshire towns that we're not the government of, but we're not the government of our neighboring communities. They have their own governments. And those members of those communities who want redress on national issues should go to those governments and ask them to redress those issues. Alternatively, if they wish to have an entity speak for the County of Cheshire or speak for the reason, there is a governmental entity in the County of Cheshire. It is called, drumroll, County of Cheshire. They're over there. There's 3 commissioners. There's also the state legislative body. So the state reps who represent Cheshire County are also a part of the county government. There's a county administrator. His name's Chris Coates. He's a really nice guy. I'm sure they'd be happy to accept any petition and hear your concerns as long as you don't work for a living and you can make their 8:30 a.m. meeting. Another thing that Councilor Williams said was a valid response would be for a communication to come before the council and then the council to say, yes, we hear your concerns. We've decided this is outside of the council's scope, so we're going to accept it as informational. If I recall correctly, that is precisely what the mayor did. That sounds like we followed that policy. And then I recall the Medicare for All. That was 2021 from what I recall. That one I brought up at our last meeting. The Medicare for All petition was brought by a resident of Dublin. I voted in favor of it. And then after it, I reached out to her and asked her, what you said really struck me. I think this is a really important issue. I think you should also approach your own town and ask them to support this petition, as well as the county. Again, like I said, you'd think I asked her to light her own house on fire. It was like, it wasn't just a, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It was, what? What? I can't do that. It was this absurd response of absolutely not. I will do no such thing. So it's this abject refusal of the members of our neighboring communities to approach their local governments. And I understand in towns that have a town select board, it can be a little tricky because then those become warrant articles. But if these issues are truly important, shouldn't that matter? Shouldn't it matter? Shouldn't this region speak as a chorus instead of just the city of Keene being one single voice in the darkness? And like you said, there was a petition brought that had over 90 signatures, about 60 from Keene and 30 from outside of town. Those 30 individuals should approach their local municipalities and ask for action. We have considered the city of Keene's petition. and we've acted on it in accordance with our rules. But all that being said, like, I think Counselor Williams makes a point. When you brought up the hurdle a counselor would have to overcome to bring a communication before the council, I think you make a really good point. It's quite a jump. It's almost like if a communication submitted by a counselor on a, so-called non-germane item is to be sent into counselor's mailbox, it's almost like this infinite loop of, if you want to bring something that you feel is important, should be important to the city, but the clerk feels is non-germane, and you send it to the council, it goes back into your mailbox, and then you're stuck in this pit where it's almost impossible to crawl out of, where you've got to convince 2/3 of your colleagues that this is important, but you can't talk to more than 6 of them at a time about an issue without triggering 91A. I think that does create too great of an obstacle to overcome. And I think that this needs to be tweaked to make sure that it does not become impossible, like you've said. So I think you did make a really good point with that. All that being said, right now, I'm kind of leaning towards moving this forward to the council, but I think it can be amended at the council to make our local government more accessible. I'm open to hearing suggestions. I think one idea I've heard is limiting communications to registered Keene voters, so that we are allowing people to petition their government, allowing the people we represent to petition us to take action on these items, while kind of protecting the city from being abused by those who just do not want to go to their government, who don't want to go to the state legislature, who don't want to go to the county, and being abused by political action committees that kind of want to, just are looking for beans to count. There's one more thing I want to say. At our last PLD meeting, I stated that I felt some of the petitioners who brought the Israeli war were not sincere. I've since spoken to some of those petitioners, and they've updated me on their actions since then and the different committees they've brought this issue to. And I want to correct myself. I do not believe they are insincere. I believe they are very sincere in their beliefs. And I respect their beliefs, and I respect the efforts and persistence that they're putting into this. So I want to make sure I correct the record for that. They're not insincere. And with that, I'll end my diatribe.
Okay. I do want to take a moment here. This committee is sort of bridging a little bit of a gap. And before we go to the public, I want to be very clear on what my expectations are. Different communications and different topics have been brought up here at this dais tonight, relating to current or recent communications and to former years' communications. We are not here tonight to debate the merits of any of those communications or what happened to those specific communications. Our job here tonight is to look at this policy, and I want to hear comment from the public specifically on the policy before us and what opinions you might have relating to that. If you have any amendments that you would offer for us to consider, that would be appropriate as well. But I don't want to hear us going off on tangents about personal beliefs of previous communications, and I can see that that could be a very slippery slope. At this point, I'm going to open this up to the public. I know we have a couple people wishing to speak. If you come forward, please state your name and address for the minute taker. That's all right. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, is my microphone on?
I think if you have a little green light, you should be on.
Yeah, if you press the button on the screen, you're good.
right, so just remember name and address, please.
Good evening, counselors. Oh, it's
There we
working
go.
now. Awesome. Madam Chair, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Jessica Bullock. I live on Mason Drive in Surrey. And I'm here to speak on the amendment that we were just talking about. And I am from Surrey, and I do hope that that doesn't mean that what I have to say means any less. As was reported on June 7th in the Sentinel article, Mayor Khan did note that some members of the group at that time weren't from Keene. And tonight, Councilor Madison, you had some things to say about that as well. And so presumably I'm one of those people to whom the mayor at that time and Councilor Madison are referring, since I live in Surrey. However, I do pay taxes to Keene. I send my children to school in Keene. I volunteer in Keene. I shop in Keene. And I came here tonight from my job as a nurse where I work in Keene and take care of the residents of Keene. So I just wanted to address that comment, or those comments from Councilor Madison and previously from Mayor Khan, and I hope that you can hear me tonight, and I hope that in the future we can use more wisdom and discretion by referring to members of surrounding towns with the respect we deserve as valued members of this community, and with the fact that we do indeed pay taxes to the city of Keene. So first, I do, in relation to the amendment, I want to make clear that by hearing public statements on this tonight in September, it does show that no such amendment was in effect when we tried to speak in June. Therefore, we do believe that Mayor Khan should not have refused us the chance to speak in committee at that time. And in fact, that dismissal goes against the precedent set by this very council, which does actually have a history of supporting discussion of international affairs, such as in April 22, Resolution R22-2022-06 was brought before the council, proposing that matters that do not have a direct local impact be sent to council mailboxes directly, as we have discussed tonight. At the time, though, this resolution failed and several councilors spoke against it. According to those minutes from April 7th, 2022, Councilor Chadbourne, who's not here tonight, but she did say she believes, and I quote, anything brought to the council should be considered because government is set up for the people. She cited a trickle-up effect and supported keeping the process open to the public. Powerfully, she also states in those same minutes that that is really effective when people come to the council and not their state officials. She cited an instance that was a New Hampshire organization and the state body kept tabling it, leaving transgendered people open to discrimination in the state. So they began at the local level and got 12 towns to sign on, which got the state passing anti-discrimination laws. So indeed, local government can affect positive change more broadly, and I think it's important that we take note of that tonight. Residents of Keene and indeed surrounding towns can bring international matters before the council, and they should be considered. But beyond that, this council should stand for what it says it does. On the City of Keene website, it says who we are. Our community consists of engaged, diverse, dedicated, caring, and respectful citizens, supported by a strong and clear vision for the future, open and accessible leadership, collaborative relationships, and ongoing civic dialogue. Each city employee provides the foundation for our efforts to reach the goal of being the best community in America by 2028, one that is sustainable, dynamic, creative, strong, just, and resilient, end quote. By the City Council staying open to hearing international matters that concern its community members, it stays true to its commitment to have accessible leadership and civic dialogue. It stays true to its commitment to be just. Furthermore, I do not believe any city can become the best community in America if they look only and exclusively at purely local matters. We are all citizens of the world, and we believe that there are many circles for our necessary involvement, whether local, national, international. And I would like to make the point as well that our taxes don't just stay local, they do in fact go to international affairs. Certainly we all agree here tonight that no human life means more than another, whether that is a life in Keene or Surrey or Swansea or Manchester or Gaza. We know that the City Council is busy with local affairs, trying to improve our city, and we want you to know we appreciate that, and we don't intend to take lots and lots and lots of your time talking about this kind of stuff. We're not trying to co-opt or distract from the important local work that you all are trying to do, and of which we greatly appreciate. We simply want our voices heard for all the issues that matter to us and all the ways that our tax dollars are spent, whether those taxes pay for our local schools or war crimes overseas. In conclusion, just because this body is a local government does not give it the right to bury its head in the sand when grave international injustices are being perpetrated in another country with our tax dollars. Is this how our city should respond to all war crimes, genocides, and humanitarian injustices? Would we not all agree that we would have wanted our city council to speak out against other grave injustices and genocides while they were happening? But right now, in real time, we are potentially witnessing the extermination of a people group, aided and abetted by American money and weapons. Councilors, this is our moment to say something about this. How do we want history to look back on what the people of Keene had to say? What do we want our legacy to be? If we believe we are a people who are engaged, diverse, dedicated, caring, strong, and just, then isn't this an important way to say that?
Thank you for your comments. We have someone else?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Katie Carbonara, and I live on Newberry Lane in Keene. So I would like to start by reading you all something. Keene is a progressive city with the heart of a town, attracting people who shape their community. We value and practice sustainability, innovative problem solving, and highly collaborative engagement with our residents and businesses, creating a resilient and self-reliant community. And if any of you don't recognize this statement, I've been seeing it for the past couple months on the walls of the rec center when we've been going to attend the Human Rights Committee meetings, which are held in that building. But I can tell you that our experience with the city over the past few months has been the exact opposite of highly collaborative engagement. Instead, you have tried to silence us, stop us, to arrest us, and now to retroactively change your own rules of order to justify how we have been treated. I want you to know that we see through this proposed rule change. No matter what justifications you give, we know you are only doing this to provide yourselves with cover for your refusal to engage with the issue of Palestine. Our city apparently likes to spin a lot of pretty words about what we care about and what type of community we are. But what has become clear to us over the past few months is that all of those words ring completely hollow, as the mayor and this body have shown complete disregard for everything we are told this city stands for. Keene is a unique city. We are the city of Jonathan Daniels. We have a human rights committee, which as far as I'm aware is something that most other cities in this state do not have. We should have been leaders in this state, in this region, on addressing the genocide in Palestine. We should have been the first city in this state to pass a ceasefire resolution. It is a lie to say that there is nothing you can do, that there is nothing our city can do to address this moment, and that this amendment is necessary. Cities have a role to play in national and even international issues. The lives of the people in this community do not stop at the borders of the city. Portland, Maine just became the first city on the East Coast to pass a resolution that calls for a complete divestment of all city funds and investments from companies that are complicit or profiting off of the war crimes and genocide being committed in Gaza. Their resolution recognized that the genocide in Gaza is only possible because of the billions of dollars in funding sent to Israel by the United States, paid for with our tax dollars. Organizations involved in helping this resolution pass also specifically called out all of Maine's federal delegation for the large campaign donations they have taken from the Israeli lobby groups, their full complicity in the genocide, and their refusal to listen to their constituents. So I say, if Portland, Maine, a city in New England, like us, can make a decision like that, can listen to the people of the city, can hold multiple sessions, listening sessions, where people from the community are invited to speak on this issue, why can't we? And I've yet to receive any type of actual real answer to that question. Being part of a local government will often be difficult, will often be inconvenient. If you don't like that reality, if you think that the right thing to do in this moment is to relieve yourselves of some of the inconvenience of listening to the concerns of community members by allowing those concerns to get lost in the depths of your email servers instead of ever having to engage with them, then maybe this isn't the job for you. So I would like to end by echoing something that Jess spoke to as well and give you all some advice. As we've heard previously from the mayor and councilors and heard again tonight, some of the justification for this rule change is to say that you want to stop non-residents or people who live in surrounding towns from bringing their concerns to this council. So first, I would just like to say, all of us in the group Keene for Palestine either live in Keene or live in the surrounding towns. None of us are part of a national organization. We weren't even an official organization until one of us was arrested, and we realized that we needed to have an organization to provide support to that person. So if you're thinking we were being funded by someone or something, not at all. This came together very organically by local residents here. And I just want you all to know how statements like the one saying that part of the reason for the justification for this rule change is to stop non-residents from coming and speaking here, or residents from surrounding towns, how that actually sounds to the people of this community. It sounds elitist and, quite frankly, classist. Keene is the largest city in a majority rural county. Every other city surrounding us is significantly less wealthy than our city. As is part of the same statement I quoted at the beginning, we consider ourselves the cultural and economic hub of the Monadnock region. Because of the geography and economic realities of our area, people who live in surrounding towns come to Keene to work, to shop, to go to the doctor, to go to school, to send their kids to school, and as Jess said, if they are doing that, they are paying Keene taxes. Decisions made by this council have big impacts on the lives of people in our entire region. I've lived in Keene for most of my life, and when I talk to people who make the decision to move outside of Keene to one of our surrounding towns, 10 out of 10 times they will say one of the major driving factors for their move was because they could not afford to pay Keene property taxes or Keene rent. So I would suggest that the council focus on making the city a more affordable place to live and a place where we are not afraid to have difficult discussions, instead of trying to make this rule change that will be deeply harmful to the democratic process in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a little nervous to talk here because I don't want to get arrested again. Okay. Is this working?
It is.
It's weird because I can't hear myself. Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Heather Servant. I have a whole thing about where I live, but I currently live in Swansea. I grew up in the Monadnock region. I graduated from Keene State College and have lived in Keene or a surrounding town for a majority of my adult life. I work at a local downtown business, kind of. My kids attend school in Keene, and although I currently live in Swansea, I own a home in Keene as of this summer. So if I could stop being referred to as a non-resident, I would greatly appreciate that. You may also recognize me as the woman who was unjustly arrested at the June 6th City Council meeting while our organization, Keene for Palestine, was trying to speak on a petition for a ceasefire resolution in Gaza. I am still fighting disorderly conduct charges. There is no way, it is not within purview for Mayor Khan or the City Council to get these charges dropped, yet here we are, staring down the barrel of an amendment you've created to cover up the lies and cowardice that you all stood behind while I was put in handcuffs. For caring about innocent people dying, being murdered, with our tax dollars. How incredibly disorderly of me. My 8-year-old son, Lennon, should be here with me today as he likes to join in
political events that I organize and participate in. And although he's proud of me for speaking out for the children in Palestine, he is now terrified that the political activism work that I'm doing is dangerous. He was too scared to come here with me today. He did not want to be in City Hall because he was scared of the place where his mommy got put in handcuffs for speaking freely. Is this not exactly what we want to strive to teach our children, to speak for those who cannot use their voice, to stand up to bullies, to make the world a better place? I wish he were here today so you could explain yourselves to him. My children deserve an answer to that more than I do. So now I am here, speaking against this proposed amendment to Section 25 in your Rules of Order. This is a violation on the rights of Keene area citizens to share their concerns with their elected officials, and you know this. Why are you really trying to pass this amendment? Do you really not believe in our community's ability to make positive change in this world? Do we not have a sister city on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? Borders are a colonial construct. We should all be caring about what happens to humankind across the world, not just here in Keene, New Hampshire. We don't live in a bubble. We need to be aware of what's happening around us. And I know it's been publicly discussed multiple times, and I am aware there were some workshops earlier this year to solve the problem of non-germane business coming to the council floor. Therefore, I am not here today to speak on my behalf only. This amendment could stop any resident from sharing any concern with a larger scope, regardless of the topic's controversy. And despite whether my opinions don't align with another person's, I still believe in their right to free speech. An amendment such as this plays like an early move in the process of a fascist takeover. Whether you realize it or not, if this amendment goes through, it will undoubtedly be written on the wrong side of history. I do not want that for my beloved city of Keene. Do you? We need to follow the good example of cities around us like Portland, Maine, whose city council recently passed a resolution to divest city funds from Israel and complicit weapons manufacturers. What we do here in Keene does matter. We have an active, involved, and caring community, caring so much. Did you guys just see that anti-bullying thing that we did? I mean, there was hundreds of people there. We care. You should be singing the praises of people like us who care. And instead, you're disgruntledly discussing how inconvenient it is for you to deal with people's concerns. If you don't want to do your job, then let people who actually care take over the seats on this council. You can choose to keep your heads buried in the sand, but myself and a lot of other residents of Keene do not and will not be down there with you. So I ask you not to support this amendment today. Do not silence people because you are intimidated by controversial opinions. You can continue to brainstorm and study other options for the creation of appropriate avenues for citizens to voice their very real, very genuine, and very valid concerns, regardless of its location. I know that Councillor Madison likes those workshops, right? So add another one to the mix. But please do not pass this amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak? No? Okay, I'm going to close the public portion of comments for this topic tonight. Definitely a lot of information for us to process in those statements. I think that there have been experiences that, as counselors, that we have all had that bring, like, we're all just an accumulation of our own personal experiences. And through those experiences, I think it has brought this committee to a place where we feel comfortable having a conversation about this amendment, because we've seen both sides of where these conversations are positive and where they're harmful to the community. And it's our job a lot of times to thread that needle. I know there's been a lot of conversation, and I don't want to go back into what happened at our council meeting, but the council did speak by not speaking in a way that I think Councillor Williams did challenge the decision on the floor, and the full council there could have been a process there for the full council to have made a different decision. And at the time, with the information that they had, they chose to not do that. And that is a decision in its own right. I do appreciate the comments here this evening. I think it's really important for us all to digest this, regardless of what happens tonight. Each and every one of us are going to sit with this conversation for the next week, and we will have it again as a committee of 15. And that's when we're going to really get down to what the will of the council will be. So with all of that being said, I would just want to open up to the committee to see where we're at, and if we want to have any conversation about the language that's here now, or if we want to see this go forward to full council next week. Councilor Williams?
Thank you. Thank you to the presenters today. I guess I'm still concerned, as Councilor Madison mentioned, of this this process where we put it in the mailbox, and hopefully we can rally, somebody can rally two-thirds of the council to vote for it. I think there should be a different way that doesn't rely so much on expecting one councilor to get that done. Activists or it's kind of unfair to petitioners to expect that they would have that kind of relationship with a city councilor in advance of sending something in. We want to have a low barrier to democracy, not a high barrier. But what I think, one possible way of threading that would be, if it's a proper petition with, say, 50 signatures from people in Keene, I think it should be able to make it on the agenda, regardless of what it says and regardless of whether a city councilor is willing to champion it. If that many Keene citizens, residents are willing to put their name to it, I think we at least would owe them hearing them out, which is all I would ask for. So there we go.
So I might complicate things and throw this out to the city attorney. Do you feel like this particular issue would justify being placed on more time and asking your office to come back with some potential alternatives? And we heard from Councilor Madison and Councilor Williams that they would like a lower barrier to a councilor suspending the, so what I hear is that we have a process for suspending the rules, which is a 2/3 majority. But is there a way of having that be a simple majority where a councilor could bring this issue? Is that something that your office would be able to, that you could recommend now, or that your office could bring back to us? Or should we try to broach the subject at full council with some advice from you?
Well, the committee, you certainly have the
Authority to do any of those
yes,
things, correct?
thank you.
Yeah.
If you wanted to put it on more time or otherwise. I guess if you're sort of asking my opinion on how to proceed, I think that the committee has sort of generally understood that to a large extent, the full council really hasn't had an opportunity to sort of weigh in, right? I think my preference would be, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be prepared at the council meeting next week to provide an opinion on some of these questions. I have to tell you that, quite frankly, some of them give me concern.
I understand that, yeah.
Limitations on the opportunity of people from surrounding communities to come to the council raises red flags for
Yes.
me. And so I would want to consider that.
Yes.
So if it's the committee's sort of wish to see if we can flesh out something to bring back to the council that may be more palatable for the council as a whole, I can certainly try and do that. I hear the concern that's being raised with respect to this threshold question. But I think part of me is wanting to have a little bit more direction
Okay,
from the council,
the full council.
from the full council. So my suggestion would be that the full council at least have some conversation about this.
Okay,
I think that the people who spoke tonight brought some very interesting and important issues before you. And the full council, and what I probably suggest to the full council is, after the conversation, send it back. And and then I'll have an opportunity at that point, having heard everybody's opinion from the council.
Yes.
And taking into account the comments that were made here tonight,
Mm-hmm.
to try and craft something. Because otherwise, I'm sort of doing it in a vacuum.
Right, and it could move forward to the full council and then get reconstructed
Yes.
anyway.
Right.
Counselor Haas?
But just to make sure that it's clear, and to the people here in the room, there is risk in that. Because it's the full council that makes this decision.
The full council could support it the way it's written.
Exactly right.
100%,
Right.
yep. And I think we all fully are aware of
Right.
of the potential. Counselor Haas, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's certainly that if we send this to full council, we will also bring along our uncomfortable spots in this amendment where we don't feel it actually does what it should do. I'm just one part of it that I'm disturbed by is where anything goes through a single point of control, where the city clerk decides whether things would be agendized or not, and that then they just go as a communication into our mailboxes or on our desk. Sure, we can bring them up afterwards, but I think as we go forward, we'll look to expand how those things can pass muster to rise up to another level when they're submitted. So I'll be looking forward to those kind of changes in the future. Thank you.
Okay. So I think I hear a direction for us. Counselor Madison, do you have more to add?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I like Councilor Williams' idea of a petition threshold. I think that kind of keeps, like, we get a lot of communications in our mailbox, in our inbox. You know, some are, you know, very well written and make a lot of sense and are good points. Others are all caps, and at the end of them, you feel like you've lost a few brain cells. By having, you know, a petition threshold, we're getting a message from citizens that, yeah, this is important. This is something we care about. Like, it's not lost on me that 60 citizens of Keene and 30 citizens of our surrounding communities care about something like that. That does mean something. And I think if we have a threshold that says, yes, this number of individuals care about this item enough so that they want it to go before the council, I think that's fair. I think that's, you know, a percentage of the population we represent saying, yes, we care about this. Yes, we want you to do something about this. That is them petitioning their government. And I feel that we have a responsibility to act. So I think if such proposal would be brought forward, I would certainly be in favor of it. And the only other thing I wanted to add is, you know, we did hear a comment about how Keene is this wealthy community. I did some quick numbers running. The median household income in New Hampshire is $89,000 a year. This is all from the 2022 U.S. Census. In Cheshire County, the median household income, $76,000 a year. In Keene, it's $69,000. The two communities I heard brought up were Swansea and Surrey. Swansea's pretty close, 71,000. Surrey, 93,700. Of all of the towns I've listed, Keene is the least wealthiest. So, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I think you're getting a tiny taste tonight of how your government does hear you. We don't always like the answers that we get when we have to make these decisions, when there's a board making these decisions. But at the end of the day, I don't think any of us walk in here thinking we're going to do something definitively. We listen to the people who are speaking to us and we make adjustments along the way. I still support having some sort of structure and policy around this so that we don't end up in this position again. And we don't have community members being concerned about their, that they have been treated in a way that is not written by some sort of rule. I think when we have structure, it helps us all understand what the expectations are. But is the way this is written the proper structure? I'm not 100% sold on it. So I think that asking the attorney to come up with some ideas, we've heard about the petition, there could be several other, I mean, it starts to get after 8 and we all start to get a little bit of a brain fog, I think. But I think we've got some time and we'll have an opportunity to speak to our fellow counselors and the council does tend to listen to their committee when their committee's asking for something. I've never seen it, that the council railroads a committee that asks for more time on a topic. So, but getting it in front of those counselors and seeing if there are any other suggestions or any other ideas or what their real feeling is important. I think the attorney's correct. Okay, so with all of that said, I would like to hear a motion. I don't know how we want to read this motion into the record.
More time?
Well, no, because we've got to get it up to full council, so we can't leave it on more time. But our recommended motion would be to adopt, but we could.
We could do exactly that and let
the council. Okay.
make a decision.
That would be my suggestion. I mean, just because you're making as you all know, making a recommendation to adopt does not mean it gets adopted.
Okay.
But it's just, at this point, it
Gives us a starting place.
Subject to the risks that we talked about.
Okay. Sure.
I would move to recommend the adoption of amendment number 4, section 25, communications.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Jones, seconded by Counselor Madison. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I would start with a vote. Counselor Williams?
No.
Counselor Jones?
Yes?
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
And just for fairness, I'm going to vote no on this so that it goes up with a fair 2/3 vote, and the council will see that the committee has some concern about this one. All right, moving on to number 5, section 32, report by committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is pretty much a housekeeping matter. It was implied in the original language in the rule, but not specifically stated, that after a matter was the subject to a full public hearing before the city council, when it returned to the committee, public comment wasn't going to be accepted because the public had an opportunity twice, once at the public hearing and again after the public hearing to submit written testimony into the record, to not have public comment at the committee level after the public hearing. Quite frankly, this was an opportunity. I had been uncomfortable with that for quite some time, and when we started looking at the rules, this was an opportunity to make that clear at this point. It's been a pattern and practice in this for the city council as long as I've been the city attorney, and back to the chair's comment about having structure and having some, specific language. That's the purpose for this. And the language is, no further public comment shall be accepted by the committee after the conclusion of the public hearing before the city council, except for the written testimony as provided above. That's the substantive change.
Okay. Any comments on this one from the committee? Anyone from the public? We've lost most of our public now. All right, seeing none, actually, I think we're pretty comfortable with this one. I'm open for a motion.
Move to recommend the adoption of amendment number 5, section 32, report by committee.
Do I have a second?
Second, I'm sorry.
Second by Counselor Jones, motion by Counselor Madison, seconded by Counselor Jones. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to start with a vote. Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison,
Yes.
Counselor Haas,
Yes.
and that one's a yes for me. We've made it to the end. All right, last one. We are at Amendment 6, Section 33, resubmissions of items previously considered.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is to some extent some housekeeping. There was a fair amount of discussion back and forth with respect to amending this section, but the language that we finally wanted me to include in it, the substantive language was to make clear that council actions, for the public's perspective, the council makes a decision on a matter. There is an opportunity under the rules of the city council and under the charter for the mayor, once a decision is made, to reconsider that. Generally, it has to happen at the next council meeting. Once the matter is concluded, there should be some finality with respect to that. I think everybody recognizes that. So what this rule says is that once there's finality in a calendar year, that same matter cannot be brought up again in that calendar year, except for the motion for reconsideration that happens. This specifically includes accepting as an item as informational. That was not included in the prior rule. It is basically an action of the city council when you accept something as informational. That was ambiguous in the prior rule, so we wanted to clean that up. And again, not to reopen this conversation too much, hopefully, but we also wanted to have the safety hatch that we tried to put in, which is the city clerk will place the communication into the councilors' mailboxes for the same reason as we've already discussed before. And I think with the same process. I think in a matter like this, it's a little bit different than the petition issues that we were talking about previously. But you know, again, that's up to the city, the committee, and the city council. But we did want to have at least some opportunity for you to see something that comes in.
Yes, and I do think it highlights that we all need to be paying attention to the paperwork on our desks when we come in on Thursdays. All right, does anyone have any comments on this one? Counselor Williams?
I guess I just had a question about, are there any other things we do that are codified in here that involve putting communications in counselors' mailboxes?
Not, that's again a part of the city clerk question. But from the rules perspective, I think those are the only two that I can think of offhand. And this is new, this language, however, the city clerk shall put the communication in the councilor's mailboxes. That was brought up as a result of the conversation about, well, gee, how are we going to know? You know, and I think those are the only two instances that I can recall offhand.
Anyone else?
Can I ask a question?
Counselor Jones?
In all my years, the only thing for reconsideration that came up at the beginning of the year was when we were talking about the telecommunications towers. But it was a different tower with different neighbors.
That's different.
So,
It's not the identical subject matter.
thank you. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this one? All right, seeing none, I'm open for a motion.
Move to recommend the adoption of amendment number 6, section 33, resubmission of items previously considered.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Williams, will second by Counselor Jones. I think that we're all just excited to put the stamp on our final motion tonight. So does anyone have any questions on that? Seeing none, I'd ask for a vote.
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
And it's a yes for me. All right, well, thank you all for making it through our first meeting back, and we will see you next week, and this meeting is adjourned.